The WAFB Podcast Network is sponsored by Neighbors Federal Credit Union.
Hey, good morning, Jacques. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. I'm talking to Garth Brooks.
Entering his second year as the LSU head football coach.
It was the only way I could get a foot in the door.
Joined by the icon, Kim Mulkey. Hey, Coach, great to see you.
Jacques Talk is sponsored by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp and Kuyon's Cajun Barbecue.
Welcome to another edition of Jacques Talk. I'm your friend Jacques Doucet, and this is my friend John Eads.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
We didn't go far to get this week's guest, but he's a very knowledgeable guy. He had to come to work today anyway, so might as well maximize our opportunities and talk to John. As you can tell, he needs to hit the weights, looking kind of scrawny today in his shirt, but anyway, looked like he could certainly maybe suit up for the LSU Tigers. I think they had like one scholarship left. Maybe you could have taken that spot.
Yeah, I guess unfortunately John Emery went down. Wish him the best. I guess there's a running back spot open because of that. Maybe Coach Kelly needs it. But Mike Scarborough's the biggest guest you've had in here, so I'm trying to be like Mike.
Yeah, after Mike came in, I felt like I needed to go to the Baby Gap and get me a medium to, I'm trying to cling to about 190 pounds. This guy's 220 over here, and he eats lots of. When you work very, very hard, and you have to feed the machine also here at the station.
I got to dip into more of that good food down here. You're always coming in with the good eats, and I'm like, what is this? What is that? And you're holding the secrets from me. So one of these times, that Greek place, you always go and get food at?
That's Albasha Express right across the street from Mike Anderson's. That's if you don't want to get out of your car and get some great food, do that. Today I went to the Go Tiger Mart, which is a gas station over by LaBerge at the intersection of Nicholson and Gardere, and they have awesome breakfasts and lunches, but I don't think any of these guys have paid to sponsor. So there's a quick shout out, but maybe they'll sponsor in the future. So we know what happened. LSU played their first game of the season in Las Vegas. It was an exciting atmosphere. It was a outstanding stadium. It was I'd say about 50-50. We got there early, and there were LSU fans all over the place. But if you thought it was going to be an LSU fan takeover, that was certainly not the case. The USC fans obviously could drive into the game, unlike LSU fans who came 1,600 miles away, I think, and that's all-day traveling to get to Las Vegas from Louisiana. But about 50-50, USC fans, LSU fans. The game goes down to the wire. Unfortunately, LSU in the fourth quarter had an opportunity. You mentioned John Emery, who we'll talk about, but LSU had a 3rd and 1. I think if LSU's able to get that first down, move the ball down the field up 17-13, they can go for the kill shot and win, go up 24-13. That's not what happened, and LSU loses at the very end to the Trojans 27-20.
That was the disappointing thing for me, is that they had a couple different opportunities to put the game away. Up by 4. I even got up from my couch to go get some water, go get a snack, for the commercial break. I'm like, all right, this is it right here. This is where they put the game away, And they just didn't do it, whether it be because of penalties or they couldn't convert on 3rd downs. I mean, the talk coming into the game was the offensive line, right? Will Campbell saying, we're going to run the football. How Brian Kelly kind of wanted to get back to his roots from his Notre Dame days of utilizing the tight ends, getting big, controlling the game. And they did well to set up those 3rd and short situations. And I thought there were more than there actually were looking back at kind of the box score in the film. But really, it was only a few, but they were a very important few because they were in the fourth quarter. They were late in the game where if you get that first down, who's to know what happens after that? You go down the field, you score a touchdown, you score a field goal, you put USC in a very tough spot. So I think Brian Kelly was so angry after the game. You asked the question that got I'm not going to do it here, the fist pounding on the table, because he knows that game was theirs to lose. And unfortunately, they, in my words, gifted it to USC.
Yeah, I don't think my question was in direct proportion to that response. I asked him about, guys like John Emery, Aaron Anderson, Savion Jones, who really had a chance to be heroes in a victory for LSU, and was that disappointing, the fact that you lose a game and those guys are on the losing end of things. You mentioned John Emery, and obviously he had an injury, I think, to his right knee last year. This year, I think it's his left knee that happened at practice on Wednesday. Not to mention he missed an entire season because of academics one time. I think he's missed the first 2 games of the year twice because of academics. I certainly remember back in 2019, entering the year, John Emery was kind of viewed as a lot of people thought he was going to take over the LSU running back spot on that 2019 national championship team. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had done some nice things to that point, but certainly not many people could have foreseen the fact that he was going to be one of the biggest pieces of the 2019 national championship team with that John Brady, former LSU basketball coach, Jacques, way before you were here. Maybe before you were born, John Brady was coaching the LSU basketball team. But, Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a receiver, as a rusher on that team. And then, John Emery got some playing time here and there, but he never took over the spot and has been around, has shown those flashes of brilliance and things that he can do that other people can't. The Alabama game in 2022 in Tiger Stadium, he catches a swing pass. He's on the sideline. He puts his foot in the ground, cuts it back, goes in for a touchdown in the first half. Those were the kind of moments he had, but, just really sad because I think LSU in the first half had something like 13 carries for 46 yards against USC. Nothing was happening in the running game, and then I think it was about the 6:30 mark of the third quarter. John Emery bust one up the middle for about 40 yards and ended up being LSU's leading rusher. He had 10 carries for 61 yards. He also caught a pass for 10 yards. So LSU's running back situation now kind of thin. I mean, you've got you got number 18 there, and Josh Williams, who's been here 6 years as well, and then you got Caleb Jackson, and with Trey Holly still in limbo, you got Durham, the young freshman, right, who's kind of waiting for. I think he'll get some carries against Nicholls State. Certainly, I'd like to see him get 5 or 10 carries against Nicholls State. But interesting situation with your running backs now.
It is. I think Durham's plenty capable, but you'd love to have more bodies than less, especially at running back, because that's the position where you take the most hits. You're put in positions to, you're more prone to getting hurt. So you're really one injury away from being in a really bad spot where you've got 2 scholarship running backs, and you got to rely on some walk-ons. The situation was kind of similar last season in the fact that they did have a lot of running backs, but we really only saw a couple. So in a sense, you look at the numbers and you're concerned, but it's kind of like the opposite of having 7 or 8 guys and you only utilize 3. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think they'll be okay, but it does, it's a bummer for John because he was thinking about transferring to UCLA for his last year. He decided to come back, and the coaching staff gave him an opportunity and carved out a role for him, and that was obvious in the first game here when he goes for 10 for 61. And then, unfortunately, that first practice after that, it's looking like he's finally putting things together. This could be the year everybody's waiting for. He's gone. So it's a real bummer, and you're going to need to find other guys to utilize. You do have Caleb Jackson, who I think we want to see run a little bit more. Josh Williams had some nice moments in that first game, and he's had plenty of great moments in his LSU career, but you're in a pretty tough spot. I think Trey Holly does have a hearing coming up a couple weeks from now, so we'll see what might come from that. But to your point about Durham, saw him in practice a lot. He's a very good catch-and-run guy out of the backfield. We saw a lot of that in the first game. He was a sub 11-second 100-meter guy in high school and ran for a lot of yards in the state championship game. Played for the same school as DeCorian Moore, former LSU commit. So he's got the pedigree to play, and I think you utilize those 3 guys and use that rotation moving forward. That's all you can do.
There you go. That's why you bring this guy on, right? He's got the high school recruiting information and everything.
That's why I get paid.
Well, you're doing a heck of a job here, cranking out content. I can't, I can't keep up with all the things this guy's doing. By the way, this is, I think this is a John Eads studio, so I appreciate him letting me come in here today and use it.
No, it's Clay Young's.
Clay Young, John Eads. I'll leave both of you a check. LSU, as you said, they were viewed going into this game as having a superior offensive line and to the defensive line of USC. And when you got Will Campbell and Emory Jones, 2 guys who are going to be first-round NFL draft picks, you got a Miles Frazier, you got a Garrett Dellinger, who are very big, strong, veteran players. USC's defensive line was kind of viewed as smaller and weaker, and LSU's going to be able to push them around. Well, LSU 26 carries for 117 yards, which is, not great. And Emory, as we said, popped off that, I think it was a 39-yarder there. On the other side of things, we spent a lot of time in the offseason talking about the LSU defensive line, and is this going to be a disaster? And can these guys play? And look, I know USC is more finesse than some of the teams LSU is going to play this year, that Lincoln Riley offense, but they only ran the ball 23 times for 69 yards. So I can't really and Savion Jones, who perhaps was the defensive player of the game for LSU. Had 2 sacks. He deflected a pass. He forced a fumble. He was all over the place. A former WAFB High School Football Player of the Year from St. James.
We know ball.
Exactly. So he's a senior now, and so we've heard about the coaching staff and Kevin Peoples being the best edge rushing coach in the country, according to Brian Kelly. Yeah. So, defensively, I thought LSU was competent. USC was only 3 of 9 on third down. We talked about how last year, I think teams were 45% against LSU on third down, basically 50%. And then in the 3 games LSU lost last year, they gave up 47 points per game. Well, in this game, midway through the fourth quarter, basically, USC had 13 points on the board. And so, look, LSU, as opposed to last year, took the fight, threw some punches defensively, and was aggressive. Do they still have some issues in the secondary? Yeah. Is their safety play great? No. But to me, it was much, much better than what we saw last year.
All you're asking for this year is for your defense to give you a chance to win, really, because they have the pieces on offense. I don't think the offensive line played as well as it could. I'm hoping that gets cleaned up moving forward, because I'll get into that in a second. I thought they were going to do a lot better in the run game. There are definitely still things to clean up for LSU defensively. I watched the film back. There were a lot of plays where on pass rushing situations, guys were attacking the same gap. Seemed like some miscommunication at points, some interesting schematic things by Blake Baker. But we could sit here and nitpick, but if we got that kind of a performance, if LSU's defense put up that kind of a performance last year in any of the 3 games they lost, they probably win all 3 of those, if not at least 2 of them. You think about Alabama, think about Florida State, even Ole Miss as those 3 losses. So that was a great starting point. Like, the defense looked astronomically better. And keep in mind, that was only week 1. So they're only going to get better and better and better as they watch the film, see what they did wrong, change up some things moving forward. So I was very happy with the defense. I would hit the pause button, though, on the running defense and the D-line, because, as you mentioned, USC's more finesse. They're an air raid system. They don't predicate themselves on running the football offensively. So I want to see this defensive line and really the front 7 with Harold Perkins, Greg Penn, Major Burns against an offense that does run the ball, wants to run the ball, and isn't more of a pass-first team. So we'll see on that. A good start, though. As far as the offensive line, I think we're all disappointed. I thought they would run the ball a lot better. I mean, they were so confident coming into it. And this wasn't a USC defensive line that's like top of the line. Bear Alexander's a great player. He's got the pedigree as a former 5-star recruit. But there were so many situations where USC was, 6 in the box, 2 high safeties. And in those situations with this offensive line, you've got to be able to run the ball more potently. You've got to be able to get 5, 6, even 10 yards and keep the sticks moving. And more often than not, it was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. So hopefully that improves. We'll see on that defensive line against a good run game, but overall, you're walking away very optimistic about Blake Baker.
Woody Marks for the USC Trojans. LSU fans should be very familiar with him. He caught like 1 million passes for Mike Leach down in Starkville. I believe he's Mississippi State's all-time leading receiver, if I'm not mistaken,
I think you're right about that.
As a running back. Yeah. And talk about a culture shock or a culture change to go from Starkville, Mississippi to Los Angeles, California. Go from Mississippi State to USC, but he had the game-winning touchdown run, 16 carries for him, 68 yards net. And certainly Kyron Hudson, the wide receiver from USC, made 2 amazing catches, one like this in the first half, and then another one late in the game, right, that he got the
Unreal.
The head-to-head, the targeting call against Jordan Gilbert, which, USC's kicker missed a chip shot field goal to end the first half, so it wasn't a given that USC was going to make the field goal, but when that play occurred, you kind of felt like it was over when USC hit that long pass, and then LSU got hit with targeting. Penalties were a big talk. Certainly Brian Kelly, after the game, was much more angry and, animated about those. The 2, Kyron Lacey, catches a touchdown. He runs down to the tunnel, and then he comes back out, and he does like a little shooting of the gun type thing. Now, when USC scored their first touchdown, they did a little dance, and the refs kind of came over and broke it up. And I'm like, come on, stop being old man. Let these guys have some fun. And then so when Lacey got called, I didn't see it initially, so I'm like, okay, so they got flagged, and USC didn't. But then it's more of a, especially in today's times with guns and stuff, whatever. But, it was directed at the opponent. It was taunting, and the flag came out, and it hurt LSU because they had to kick off deep. LSU's kicker was Aaron Burrell.
Yep. Yeah, Aaron Burrell. Yep.
Aaron Burrell
Yep.
made a touchdown-saving tackle there at midfield.
Good play.
But they shouldn't have got the ball at midfield. It should have been more like the 20 or 25.
Yeah, I got a little bit of context on that Lacey penalty. Someone that's close with him, I talked to him on the phone on Sunday, and he basically said that he and Greedy Vance is the player that he was pointing the gun at, who played at Edna Carr from around here. They have a little bit of a pre-existing relationship. They played against each other because Vance played for Florida State last year. So it was a competitive thing. It didn't have any ill intent, but you can't fake point a gun at somebody, especially in a football game, because that's just going to get taken out of context 10 times out of 10. And it really hurt the team in that situation. Now, Lacey's a good dancer. Loves to dance. Yeah. That's fine. I don't think they were flagging him for that. It was when he was running back to the bench, and he did that. And then Major Burns' penalty I thought was more critical. I thought that hurt them even more because that was on the play where Jones had the PBU, which you already talked about, and Whit Weeks almost had the pick. That ball would have been at like the 36-yard line. Instead, 15 yards because Burns takes his helmet off, celebrating after the play, and then LSU gets pushed back because of a false start on Will Campbell. They do get to a 3rd and 1, but they can't convert that 3rd and 1. I just think that the play calling would have been different when you're in the middle of the field about the 40-yard line versus your own 20, and that may have changed things. And let's keep in mind, Lacey's an older guy. He's, a fifth-year senior. Burns is a fourth-year player in this program, something like that. These are guys that you can't have making these penalties. Like, these are freshman kind of mistakes. You've been there. You've done that before. You just can't do these things. But with that, and really it's an overarching theme, it was week 1. That's when you're going to have the most penalties. That's when you're going to have the most self-inflicted wounds. Cannot happen again moving forward. That's what I'm banking on.
10 penalties for 99 yards for the LSU Tigers. And certainly I remember last year when LSU played at Missouri, and Brian Kelly was talking about Major Burns. Late in the game, Major Burns intercepted a pass, and he ran it into the end zone for a touchdown. Now, look, you're going to tell a guy 10 yards to not score, but Brian Kelly, he's not supposed to score. He's supposed to go down. Now we got to kick off, and now we got to defend, and we got to do all this stuff. Major gets excited. He just talks about Major Burns getting excited and everything, which he does. I mean, in that bowl game last year against Wisconsin, he's hitting guys and standing over them and flexing. And
even if they got a first down.
Right. Even if they picked up 20 yards. And I think the Wisconsin players at one point were kind of laughing at him, like, well, what's this guy's deal? But as Coach Kelly said at his press conference on Tuesday, that he was so contrite, and Major Burns felt really bad. So did Kyron Lacey. And, there's a shot of Major Burns hugging Coach Kelly on the sideline and all that. So, you gotta eliminate those. Those are things that take no talent, right? Eliminate the things that take no talent. Yep. And LSU also, as Coach Kelly pointed out, I don't know if it's bad luck, but I mean, like UCLA runs that gimmick play. It was the reverse. The reverse, and the ball's on the ground. There were several times the ball was on the ground, and LSU just couldn't get to it. And as you mentioned a while ago, was it Womack that knocked the ball up in the air, or Savion, one of the two?
Jones, and then Witt was there.
And then Witt was there to pick it off, and it doesn't quite get it. I mean, so there were like 4 or 5 plays there that LSU just could not force turnovers on. And and look, some people have a lot to say about Lincoln Riley, and they dog him. I mean, honestly, how many coaches out there really have a much better resume than Lincoln Riley? I mean, the guy's made playoff appearances. He's won conference championships. He's produced multiple Heisman Trophy winners. This guy's a pretty good coach, especially offensively. And so, for LSU to go out there against him and hold him to what they did, I think was pretty impressive. Now, somebody may look at the stat sheet and say, well, they had 447 yards, but like I said, they had 13 points, midway through the fourth quarter, and LSU had a chance to, win the game 24-13 or something like that. So, a lot of coulda, shoulda, woulda in this game. Yeah,
they got some stops. That missed field goal, they held USC to a couple field goals. That's where your money's made. And for the most part, they eliminated the big play. I think that was the Achilles heel for the defense last year, was the slant over the middle that's taken by Keon Coleman or Jordan Watkins for 80 yards, one play, just like that. Or the big run right up the middle, Ulysses Bentley, Quinshon Judkins, 60 yards, bang, drives over. They just scored a touchdown in the blink of an eye. Didn't see a lot of that. I think Jordan Gilbert got burned one time on the sideline on a deep ball. But that's really the only big play I can think of. A couple seam shots in between the cover two, the corner, and the safety where guys made spectacular catches. But you got to make them earn it. I think that was the thing that stuck out to me, is that LSU, Blake Baker, made Lincoln Riley a very elite play caller, a very elite coach from an offensive standpoint, earn the yards, earn the points, and it could have gone either way.
A few more things here. For the second consecutive year, LSU opens the year getting the ball first and drives it deep into the opposing territory, and for the second straight year gets no points. They go for it on fourth down again. Coach Kelly talks about analytics, and the analytics said that we had a chance to score, and so we roll with the analytics. I don't know.
These analytics are crazy.
I mean, he's the guy getting paid $10 million a year, not me, but that's something that was certainly discussed with fans. I mean, last year, Trey Bradford, who's now playing for, I think, his 10th team with the Grambling Tigers, first play of the game, they slide him out of the backfield. He catches it and goes for about 65 yards, and then LSU in 4th and goal. I think Jaden got rushed and he got sacked. And on this, kind of similar, Garrett got rushed and just had to fling it out of bounds. So, that's that's a 13-play, 74-yard drive in which you get nothing to start the season. So, you get down to the 3-yard line. I know you're all the way down there, and if he would have caught it for a touchdown, then we wouldn't be talking about it. But that's rough when you put together a beautiful drive. Kyron Lacey had 4 catches for 41 yards on the opening drive, and no points for LSU.
I didn't mind the call, and maybe that's because I'm a Detroit Lions fan, and if you know Dan Campbell, he goes for every fourth down. So I like being aggressive because I think it can really pay off. Maybe what I didn't like was that Garrett Nussmeier had no outlet. USC a couple different times went cover 0, man-to-man. I'd like to see Joe Sloan scheme something up in that situation, especially because most of the time you can see it's coming. They're crowding the line of scrimmage. Sometimes they'll drop off and drop linebackers, drop defensive linemen over the middle so you can't hit that slant route or something quick like that. But Danton Lynn, USC's defensive coordinator, loves to bring pressure. That's why at UCLA they had the top run defense in the country when he was there. They defended the pass very well. He forced you to make mistakes. So in those situations, that throwaway on fourth down where Nussmeier really just rolled out, tried to evade the pressure, and threw it to Darren DeQuano, essentially, who was holding the camera, I'd like to see there be an answer for that, an easy answer for that, because it can be as simple as a pick route, a slant underneath, a tunnel screen. Just throw it up to Kyron Lacey. I'd like to see a better answer for those situations where you see cover 0 man-to-man across the board, because they will see it again. So I didn't mind the decision. I like being aggressive, especially when it's the first drive. You're on the 3-yard line, too. You don't convert there, USC's backed up.
Right.
So your defense gets a stop, and you got a lot of confidence in that defense. You get the ball back with great field position. So I'd like to see Sloan make some adjustments there. And that's another thing that they talked about, right, was red zone execution, red zone play calling. So we'd like to see improvements there.
Joe Sloan, obviously, this is the biggest opportunity of his career now, being LSU's first-year offensive coordinator. Cortez Hankton is listed as the co-offensive coordinator, but Joe Sloan, it's his gig.
The buck stops with Joe.
Buck stops with Joe Sloan. And look, we haven't talked about Garrett Nussmeier. He did not make the crazy mistake that sometimes he's made in the past. He was very accurate, very decisive. As somebody told me at the gym today, it wasn't like in the past sometimes it was, chunk it. In this case, it was bang, bang, back foot, I'm going here. Bang, bang, I'm going here. And it was the timing was he was very accurate. He's got one interception that was thrown at the end of the game when, it was desperation time and all that. But, what was missing was the impromptu explosive play that Jaden Daniels would give you in which, he could run for 40, 50 yards. Did Garrett run the ball?
I don't think he did at all.
I don't think he did.
No.
I think it was funny because I looked at last year's stats and I realized Garrett didn't play much last year.
Yeah.
But Jaden Daniels last year rushed for, I think it was 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns, and then Garrett had 1 carry for 1 yard the entire year last year. So, that's a conversation piece as well when the defense isn't going to respect the fact it's like Shaq standing behind the three-point line. No one's going to go guard him. You're not going to shoot that. So, Garrett Nussmeier, they don't think he's going to run. Now, this is another thing. If he gets hurt, this team's 0-1 at this point and has has teams like Alabama, Ole Miss, at Texas A&M. I mean, they got a tough road to hoe. If Garrett Nussmeier gets hurt, the general consensus is you're up, you know what creek without a paddle, and that's it. So that's the deal of which, okay, can we run him? Can he get 10 yards and run out of bounds, or is somebody going to hit him and we're going to lose our starting quarterback?
Well, we saw a little bit of running I remember the spring, they were running a read option drill, and all the quarterbacks were repping it. Ricky Collins, A.J. Swan, Garrett Nussmeier. So I thought we'd see a little bit, and they talked about this on the broadcast, just the disadvantage you're at when your quarterback is not a threat to run at all. Like when you run, say, a stretch play to the outside going to the right. The backside defenders on the other side of the field, they don't need to sit there and be hesitant that he might pull that and run a naked bootleg or pull it on a read option. They're going downhill attacking the running back. So there's elements to LSU's offense this year that just simply won't be as explosive, and it's just intrinsic. There's nothing you can do about it. Nussmeier's not a threat to run until proven otherwise, but even then, how much of a threat is he? I don't think they're calling many Garrett Nussmeier design runs this season. So it's going to be harder to be creative this year and use that 11 on 11 in a football game. It's going to be more like 11 on 10. Now, how you can make defenses pay for that is if they want to be downhill, they want to sell out for the run because they don't think he can pull it, you run a hard play action. And I think that's what I want to see more in the future is Sloan call up more of those play action passes to allow those receivers, even Mason Taylor, Kamorian Pimpton, to get those one-on-one matchups, find the open space, and you can make a defense pay in that regard. So, no, he's not a running threat, but there's ways to be creative and dress things up and make defenses pay in other ways. So I think that's what they need to do moving forward. And maybe they do have a couple run plays in there. They were running them in the spring, a little bit in the fall. I don't know if you want to use those game one because, as you said, if they lose quarterback in game one, the season is basically over. May as well start thinking about Kim Mulkey and hoop season there. So.
And not a criticism of Garrett. That's just the player he is.
Right.
I mean, that's it's apples and oranges there with Garrett and Jaden. They're two different players. They play the game differently. And in the wide receiving core, Kyron Lacy didn't catch a pass in the second half. That was certainly highly discussed. He had 7 catches for 94 yards in the first half. And how do we feel about this receiving core? I mean, Mason Taylor's your tight end, and I think he caught 7 passes in the bowl game against Wisconsin when Garrett made his first ever start. And in this game, he catches 7 passes again for 62 yards and 49 yards after the catch. Aaron Anderson is a guy who last year, I don't want to call him a big disappointment, but I think there were some things expected, and I think he had 12 catches for 59 yards the entire year. In this game, he has 5 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown. He had the big 41-yard catch in which LSU was trying to win the game with a touchdown late in the regulation, had to kick the field goal instead. So, and then C.J. Daniels, 3 catches, 19 yards. I think Savion Thomas caught a couple passes. Then Chris Hilton Jr., unfortunately, did not suit up. That's really unfortunate because we saw him in the fall. He looked like he was ready to have a big year, and he may still have a big year, but he had a bone bruise and did not play.
I'd say they were missing something, and I think what they were missing was Chris Hilton. He's that deep threat. He's that vertical threat. I don't think LSU really hit many deep passing plays, minus that Aaron Anderson catch, which really was a broken play. Nussmeier rolled it out left. Here's why Kyron Lacy got no catches in the second half. It's not like they weren't scheming things up for him. Watching the film back, USC made some adjustments. They hyper-focused on Lacy. They bracketed him. They made sure they had somebody underneath, somebody over top. They were not going to allow him to single-handedly carve up the defense like he did in the first half. So that left open opportunities for Aaron Anderson. On the play where he caught that 41-yard pass, there were 3 guys surrounding Lacy, no deep safety. So Anderson drifted across the field, and there was nobody back there. So Nussmeier could just float it to him, and he can make that catch. And I think that there's opportunities this season for other receivers like Anderson, like Kyle Parker, C.J. Daniels, Chris Hilton, et cetera, to make plays in those situations where defenses are game planning towards Lacy. I would have liked to see more out of C.J. Daniels. He was a monster in fall camp. He was a catch machine, especially in the scrimmage drills. Didn't see a lot of that in this game. I think when they get Chris Hilton back, though, they'll be able to stretch the field more and do some more damage from a passing standpoint. And Brian Kelly made it a point to single out Shelton Sampson, too, as a guy that needs to step up and be ready to play in the next couple weeks. I guess he had a head injury there early in fall camp. I guess he never really recovered from that in the month of August. But he's a big, tall, rangy receiver who you've seen for a couple years, and I think they just need to find more of those vertical elements to stretch the field even more. Maybe that'll open up the run game too.
Yeah, former Catholic High star Shelton Sampson. It was the first day of practice. He went up and made that catch, and he kind of landed on his head.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's...
He did catch it.
I don't know. Yeah, he did catch it. That was kind of one of the highlights of the first day. I don't know if that's what hurt his head the whole time, but certainly as Coach Kelly, as you mentioned, Coach Kelly made it an effort at his press conference to bring up Shelton Sampson as a guy that they need to get involved in the offense. Okay, a few more things. Harold Perkins, saw him early in the game, get in the backfield. I don't know how much I saw of him after that, and that debate will go on. You obviously have watched this film a lot more than I have, but that'll be a talking point moving forward. Are they utilizing him the right way?
He's still figuring things out. I think he's had struggles. You've talked about this before, just with handling offensive linemen, shedding blocks and helping out in the run game. I thought he did some good things. There were some plays where he was sent on a blitz and he would end up in the same gap as another LSU defender, and they would kind of trip over each other. So I think as much as possible, they just need to let him fly around and let Harold Perkins be Harold Perkins. You talked a lot about this. I don't want to hear this phrase ever again, the amount you talked about heading into the season. Paralysis by analysis.
Paralysis by analysis. Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes I think Blake Baker and some of these blitz schemes were a little bit too cute. They're crossing guys, they're doing this, they're doing that, and they're just running into each other. They're not doing anything, So I think they just need to continue to let him be in positions to rush the passer, use his speed to wreak havoc. Because there were times where Miller Moss and that offensive line of USC's held up that blitz, and he had plenty of time to carve up the secondary, and that is no bueno, especially when you see a quarterback like Jackson Dart in a few weeks. That's the biggest game remaining this season. At this point, I would say that's like a Super Bowl-esque game for LSU. These miscues, these things that happened week one, they're going to happen, but they need to be cleaned up later on, and you need to be putting your athletes and your elite athletes like Harold Perkins at that in positions every play to wreck a play, because we know he can.
Great stuff. This guy knows his stuff. Johnny, he's been breaking it down for us. And LSU this weekend, they will pay Nichols $700,000 to come to Tiger Stadium. This is one of those games where it could be competitive for a little while. Look, Nichols is one of the better FCS programs. They've won Southland Conference championships on a somewhat regular basis there in the Tim Rebow. They've made it to the playoffs more than once. They've got a great program down there in Thibodaux. But LSU's expected to win the game by 40 points or more. They used to say, this might be simplistic, but some of the coaches would say, when it was 1AA and 1A, they'd say, well, the 1A teams, they have 85 scholarships, the 1AA have 65. And so they can kind of play head-to-head for a while, but eventually the 1AA team wears down and the game gets blown open and all that. So obviously not expected to be a competitive game this weekend. It is the home opener for LSU. First time they'll play in Tiger Stadium this year. It's the 100-year anniversary of Tiger Stadium. They've got the new video board there in the north end zone that people are looking forward to seeing. And there's always been the controversial subject of those LED lights. And I think Alabama was the first one to kind of implement that, or it's the first one I remember. And I remember some LSU fans saying, God, I hope we never do this. We don't need to do this. We're LSU. We don't need the flashing lights and all that. So I don't know what they're going to do with that, but I have heard that they're going to implement LED lights in some capacity. And, what's the old saying? Recruiting, the universe, the universe revolves around recruiting. And so it's like the 75-year-old man, the 70-year-old man, or the fans that don't like the LED lights are canceled out by the fact that maybe a recruit, a 5-star somewhere,
says,
there
you go.
I love those LED lights. I might go to LSU. So, and that goes for the music as well. The old school people want to hear the LSU band play. They don't want to hear the piped-in music, or some of them don't.
Yep.
That's the whole in-stadium experience that LSU is trying to figure out and please the most people as they can. So LSU and Nichols this weekend. There's not much LSU can do in this game to move the needle with their fan base in terms of making them feel better about what happened last weekend. I guess they can make them feel a lot worse if they go out there and not play well.
Yeah.
If it's a 10-3 game at halftime or something like that. But really, it comes down to LSU's first SEC game on the road at the South Carolina Gamecocks in Columbia. And, if they win that one and play well, I think everyone will feel better. And as you said, Ole Miss coming up, LSU, if they can mount a winning streak in which they play USC, South Alabama before Ole Miss comes to Tiger Stadium. That'll do it for now. John Eads, outstanding job. And obviously you can catch his podcast as well here on WAFB. We had a great talk about the LSU Tigers. Thanks for stopping by. Tell people about Jacques Talk, and we will see you later.